Hi, welcome to Inside the Moms Club, where being a mom is the coolest place to be. Here in the Moms Club, we believe that what embarrasses you now will make a great story later. And let's face it, you don't laugh sometimes, you're gonna cry. Join us in having a good laugh together. I'm Monica Samuels. You are now inside the Moms Club, your private destination for all things mom. Welcome, moms. I'm Monica Samuels, your host of Inside the Moms Club. And today you'll see an episode that I did with my good friend, Julie Orchid. We just returned from Los Angeles, where we met some great guests. And today you're going to have the pleasure of listening to one of them. But before we get to that, I just wanted to share with you a personal feeling that I have about the holidays, and they pertain to moms. Moms have a lot of responsibilities at the holidays. We pretty much put on the whole show, if you want to be honest about it. And there's just so much to do. So for example, putting up the tree, that's a challenge. And I'm particularly challenged. So I'll show you. Tony, roll that video.
Hey, you know that Christmas tree I bought? Well, I didn't estimate correctly, and it's way too tall. It belongs in a hotel lobby. Well, we're so short, as you know, and we're all afraid of heights. So we're only able to decorate it up to like a 3/4 of the way. So I was just curious, your son is like what, 6'2"? 6'3"? Okay, well that's perfect. How much would you want to decorate the top quarter of our tree? Well, no Angel. No. Sadly, we'd have to decapitate her to fit her up there, and that's not very Christmassy.
Well, as it turns out, we actually hired a guy to come and put a bow at the top. But I think it looks great. I mean, I really do think that tree could go in a hotel lobby, if you want to know the truth. And to say, oh, my own mother did help me too. I did give some props to her too, but I think it looks terrific. Then the other thing, like a lot of people have to plan their holiday meal, and I'm sure a lot of you are doing that. Fortunately for me, I'm the world's worst cook, so I don't have to do that. All I have to do is log on and do my online orders for Christmas Eve and Christmas dinners, which I have checked off the list, and I'm all set to go. I have my pickup times ready, and as long as I'm on time and the food's on time and the lines aren't too terribly long, it's all good. Now there's the issue of reheating, which I can never get quite right, but I'll worry about that on those actual days. And then for me, I love to shop. I'm sure you find shopping fun, or I hope you do. But I love to shop. Lately, though, it's gotten a little trickier, though, because there's been some new people added to my list that I have to shop for. Well, Tony, roll that video.
Hi, I was wondering if you'd do me a favor and take a look at Oprah's favorite things and choose your top 3 favorites and send them to me. Oh, who am I? I'm your boyfriend's mother, and he asked me to buy your Christmas gift this year, and I thought this would be the easiest way to do it. And actually, there are some very cool things this year. For example, I got a blue baseball cap with a headlight on it. Yeah, it's great for, walking the dog, or if you're out late at night. It's a safety thing. Yeah. Oh, you picked your gift already? From Tiffany's. I guess I forgot to mention the budget.
Yeah, I hate to break it to her, but I think she is getting this hat. I mean, it is a great hat. Let me tell you, I love it. So that may be what she's getting this Christmas. Anyway, it's a fun time. It's a festive time. I hope you and your family are enjoying every single minute of it right up to the day. I know I started listening to Christmas music Halloween, because that's when they start playing it. And I'm going to play it right through, probably through the new year. So let's make the most of this holiday. Well, with that, let's start another great episode of Inside the Moms Club with my great co-host and dear friend, Julie Orchid. I hope you enjoy the show.
Let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. She is known as the housewife on the Real Housewives of Toronto. She was part of that show. She's a Jill of all trades, a true Renaissance woman. She's the founder of iFinance, which is one of the largest financial institution firms in North America. She holds a PhD. She's the author of several top-selling books. She's a fashion influencer. a wife, and a mother of 8 children.
8 children.
8. And with that, I'm just speechless.
Gonna...
What else can I say? I feel so inadequate. We are thrilled to have with us Ann Kaplan. Welcome to the Moms Club. We are so thrilled to have you here today, and we noticed that one of the books you wrote 6 books, and one of them is called If You Don't Laugh, You'll Cry, which is actually our theme of Inside the Moms Club. It's if you don't laugh, sometimes you're going to cry.
That's right.
So how did you come about writing, where did that book come from, and what's the thesis behind that book?
So I was writing a business book for doctors called Best Practices, and it was a serious book. And it was for cosmetic enhancement doctors and practice management. And as I was writing it, I kept thinking about the things that were funny about cosmetic enhancement. And you can't put that in a serious book. So I would write little notes of the things I found funny. And by the time I finished, I had 99 things that were funny. So I worked with a cartoonist and I did a book on If You Don't Laugh, You Cry, cosmetic enhancement humor.
That is so terrific. I'm going to have to find that book for my husband because he is very much into cosmetic enhancement. Yeah. Well, tell us about your writing. You've written so many different books. Are they mostly business books? And what's inspired your writing? And how do you take the time to do that with all your other activities?
A lot of work. There's 2 business books, and there's a fashion book, which I was asked to write and raise money for AIDS research, and the humor book. And I also did my thesis, which is on credit scoring.
Amazing.
And I've done a cookbook, and then I'm working on another not a cosmetic, If You Don't Laugh, You'll Cry, and it's the pandemic humor. So it's sort of a lot of focus. For a few hours a day each day.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. And you can find humor in some of the more difficult situations. So I think that's great that you're doing that. I was actually talking to a friend of mine today who just lost a husband recently, and she's about to go out on a comedy tour. And she said, it's going to look funny if I'm out there looking happy and laughing. I said, no, just embrace the fact, hey, I'm a widow. But there's even funny things that come out of being a widow, and people can appreciate that. So I think that's very great that you have, been inspired by some things that most people would find a little difficult. So that's awesome.
I think you're right. If you have life and you have death, and everything else in between is absolutely funny. And we just have to laugh at ourselves, because between those 2 things, and health also fits in there, but between those 2 things, it's to me, it's open. Anything's funny.
Yeah, that's so true. You have 8 children.
I do.
So how did that coincide, your children and their ages, with what you were doing? And how did you manage?
So I started out, as a single mom of 2 kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know where my first husband went. I call him Gone with the Wind. He was gone. 2 kids, and absolutely never wanted to say in my 20s that I was going to be alone. And, no support, no financial support. This was not what I dreamed of. I did not dream of marrying and then being left like that. And ultimately I did leave. And I ended up meeting, I'd already started my company, and I ended up meeting another man. And we married, and he had 2 children, but the mother wasn't there. And so I took on his 2 kids as my own. So we had no spouses on either side raising our kids. So we ended up having the 2 kids again together. So we had 6. And then my sister passed away, and she did not leave me her clothes. She left me her kids. So I got 2 more kids.
There you go.
So we had 8 children, and it was not something I would recommend to anybody. I love being a mom. I love my family. I love all of my children, but that was one of the hardest things, juggling my sister's children, the loss of my sister, the and dealing with that with her children, and then mixing a family and having 2 very young children and 4 older ones. And that's not some pretty picture that this is not the Brady Bunch. This was really hard.
Really, real life.
And I don't think any of it was easy. I'm not looking for sympathy, but when I look back on it, it was hard. So there is no magic wand. Raising 8 children, 2, 2, 2, and 2 is not an easy feat. And
what were their age? What was the age range with all of them?
I would say the youngest would be, there's probably about a 14-year age spread in there altogether.
And did the older ones help with the younger ones, or were they?
Oh yeah, if they wanted to know how to smoke pot, or
they taught them all the bad habits. Well,
that is incredibly challenging. I mean, what you just described, I can't even. Well, if it had happened to me, I'm not sure.
Well, I have a question,
where
Anne.
I would be.
That leads me to the word that you've used a lot that I've read about is unscripted. Is that part of the unscripted future? That, I mean, like, of course, we all believe that we wrote our story and this is how it's supposed to be. I'm living this exact thing where, I'm not living the story that I thought it would be. So can you elaborate on your word unscripted? Because a lot of women listening, you want to pick a word or what describes you, and you want to pick a word that means something.
I will, but I want to say one thing.
Yes.
When we have the story we thought we were going to have, and then if I can reflect not as much on what you said, because then we were in a Q&A of that, but on what I just said about finding myself a single mom, it wasn't the story I wanted. But is that such a bad story? Because we follow these stories that we think we're supposed to have. Mm-hmm. But really, is it so bad that I was a single mom? With 2 kids? It's only because society expected me to stay married to Gone with the Wind. Mm-hmm. And I didn't. And so that wasn't the story I wanted, but I created that story.
Right.
I created the perfect life for me was I was going to be married to the same man forever, and we were going to raise these kids, and then we were going to retire and go on a cruise ship. I created that in my head. And that actually, because I didn't end up with that, does not mean I failed or that because I created that story.
Yeah.
So
it's an awful setup.
I didn't fail. That was my story, as if I was reading a book and this is where the next chapter ended up. And in hindsight, I see that. At the time, I didn't.
Of course.
Well, it's interesting too, because what I just said is, well, if just having the 8 kids in that situation, I don't know how, that's incredibly difficult, and I'm not sure how I would do that. And yet look at you, you're beautiful, you're accomplished, you're successful. I mean, it's amazing, which just goes to show, I mean, we can navigate life, the good and the bad together, and come out on top. And it looks like you definitely have done that, which is, kudos to you. And you're an amazing example for everybody that can happen.
The main thing is, and I'll tell you the secret, is Botox. Because the kids come home, and you're really upset, and you can't get mad. You're like, you actually can't get mad. You can't get mad at your husband. You can't get mad at anyone. So I would, for anyone who is upset in their relationship or has children, I would just freeze your face into a perpetual
So you're really
smile.
recommending Botox for your 20s, your 30s, and your 40s, and then
that is good advice. That goes along with, we have a friend, Leslie, and she told me her good advice is with her kids is she never lets them know that they got to her ever. But Botox would certainly help, because I would be challenged.
Exactly. Tell Leslie, just, book an appointment.
Yeah.
And
that's hilarious.
Then she's got the whole package right there.
I'm going to flip-flop this. Okay, I have one question for you. I'm now a single mom, and I want to give advice to my kids who happen to be female, 2 girls. And how do we send the message to girls to get control of your money, to know your money, to know where it is, your credit score, know these things? This is not something that, I was given good information from my parents. I just chose not to listen. I'm a good person who made bad decisions. Okay.
So with my, in my life, I came up as you've read in the book, from a dysfunctional home.
Yes.
And I never wanted to be in a position where I could not walk out that door.
Yeah.
So financially, I wanted to be able to leave at any time without worrying about whether my husband was going to, or ex-husband, whatever, help me. And I would give the same message to my daughters, and I do, is don't marry to depend on somebody, and look after yourself financially, and make sure that you always can walk out that door.
Yeah. Know where your money is. Yeah.
Know how to manage your own finances. Don't make that part of your relationship. It can be, it can be cohesive,
Sure.
but not dependent.
I loved what you said too, is if there's something that you can't handle, change your lifestyle. Like actually what I was, reading and listening to what you were saying is like, you have to change your lifestyle. It's really that simple. If it's not something that is you can afford or do, then, live within your means and, preach that, because that will relieve a lot of stress, have better relationships. Am I wrong? Am I right?
Totally. And this era is really good for living more within our means, because I think COVID has done that. And then some of the movements have done that. And I don't feel the pressure where at some age or stage in my life, I felt like wearing brand names was, you had to wear brand names. Now I feel really comfortable just wearing what I want to wear. And I know my friends would laugh because I dress up a lot. So they would sit there and just think that was really absolutely funny. But I actually feel good just going out and wearing a t-shirt and wearing jeans, but not having a brand showing. And I think that era has done that for us. But I think at some point, some people, and at some stages, not people, we feel that we need to have something more material than maybe is necessary. And so it's hard to get ahead when you're caught up in brands and material things.
Yeah. And, I heard that one of your daughters was, you were kind of learning from her and what she had to say about name brands. And it just brings a point of being a mother of 8. You actually are learning from your kids. They are sometimes your greatest teachers.
Well, just to live in society, just to function, sometimes you have to know what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that daughter is taught me a lot. And she would say things like, you look at your shoes, and I go look at my shoe closet. And I go, those are last year's shoes. And she's looking at the number of shoes. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, they're outdated. I need more. And she really, really pushed on me to take a look at my consumption. And I learned a lot from that girl.
Yeah.
A lot.
It kind of irritates me when I learn a lot from my kids, but it happens often.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
that's
important. So what's the one piece of advice that you live by? Like if you were to be able to share one thing, because you've written several books and you've given lots of great advice, what's the number one thing that our listeners could take away from, if there's one thing in this interview that they'd like, oh, wow, I learned a lot right there.
Yeah.
I think you can't take yourself too seriously. That's really important, because what people say about you and what they do, you actually have to like yourself. And when you start to think about your core and somebody is hard on you, mean to you, judgmental, if you like yourself, your reaction will come from a better place in your head. And this world is full of judgment right now. It's full of people are insecure and not compassionate and cancel. And I think that when you can hold your own and not hear the meanness, but hear the hurt, and be confident in the values that you stand on. I think that's the most important thing. That's what's gotten me through, is I actually don't care what someone else thinks. I care about what I think.
That's great. No, that is really great advice. And it's also where Botox comes in handy as well.
That's better. That's
because
better
then
advice.
they don't even know that you didn't bother me at all.
You didn't bother me at all.
Yeah,
so.
I'm all good. Well, Anne, this has been amazing, but we have some more amazing questions to ask you from our amazing Zoomer moms. So come on in, Zoomer moms. I I will introduce each one of you. Welcome, Dr. Tanisha. We'll start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself and ask your question for Dr. Ann.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Dr. Ann. I'm Dr. Tanisha Timms. I'm a clinical psychologist. I live in California. Such a pleasure to meet you. I'm loving everything that you said. I love your confidence, first of all, and I love the advice that you've given. It's so amazing because I recently found out that people that I thought were my true friends really just aren't. And so when you talked about the insecurities of others, it's just amazing how that can truly affect, friendships. But I've learned, I'm 49 years old, and I've learned that, I'm okay with me. And I'm okay with loving me, and I accept who I am. So it just makes life so much easier. I have not had Botox as of yet. I am preparing for a tummy tuck because I believe in living my best life. And so I'm treating myself and just exploring everything that God has to offer. So it's such a pleasure to meet you. And you've just given me another permission to go ahead and do that for myself. So thank you. But with 8 children, I think it's a blessing. And the one thing I want to say, what I know and what I've experienced is that God gave you those 8 children because he knew that you could handle it. And he knew that you had something great to offer and to give each one of them. So you are a blessing. You are definitely a blessing, you and your husband. So I'm just happy for you and all of your accomplishments, just being a woman, a dynamic woman. So thank you for what you do and what you represent.
That's very kind of you. And can I ask, what kind of psychologist are you? And did I pass?
Well, I am not here to judge you, but if I had to give you a score, you passed everything with flying colors. I am a clinical psychologist, but I'm also a school psychologist. I've been a clinical psychologist for about maybe 6 years and a school psychologist for about 27 years.
See, Ann, the Botox is working.
Yeah. So do you have a question for Ann?
I don't have a question per se, but I just really wanted to praise her and give her accolades and just let her know how dynamic I think that she is. Yeah. She is what I call the truth. She's doing, she's not just talking about it. She's strength. She is strength. She is the epitome of what I think women are and should strive to be. And I'm just so honored to be here on this panel.
Yeah, she's taking action.
Well, and a woman who's raised 8 children like that, I would love to read your advice about raising 8 children. And I mean, because we all have our struggles, even, trust me, we all have our struggles. Like lately I've had a few.
So, I have one.
And that's, yeah.
And
Elizabeth, welcome to the Moms Club, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, I am Elizabeth Kennedy, and I am also in California. I'm in Huntington Beach.
Yes.
And I am a fledgling influencer and a student of computer science at True Coders, which is headquartered in Hoover and Birmingham, Alabama. But I do all of my learning remotely via Zoom, like what we're doing right now.
Nice.
And you have a question for Ann?
Yes, I do. I only have one child. I have one daughter. She's 10 years old, and she is the light of my life. And may I just say so much respect to you and so much admiration, because I can't believe that you have 8 children. That's a blessing, of course, but that is a really big workload. Do you have any advice for how, or do you have any personal experience with how you were able to carve out time for yourself amidst that really heavy workload? Because I struggle with that, and I only have one.
Yeah, I would. There's no easy thing, but I would get up a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I worked full time. I drove my kids to school, and then I would be home about 5, 6 o'clock. So I worked full time, and then I would schedule my me time. I actually put it in my calendar and scheduled it. So when I was studying and doing courses or manicures, pedicures. I'd take my kids for the manicures, pedicures, but I scheduled everything. I didn't not schedule it. I scheduled it. And then when the kids were in bed, you train them young to go to bed early, because then after that, that's your time. Right. If your kid's staying up till midnight, then it's taking away from your time. So I had them in bed, and I had time with my husband then, or time for me, and no time for television, no time for that kind of thing.
I mean, if you told me you were watching Netflix, I would be like, no, you weren't. There's no way. There's no way.
No, I don't even know how to use a remote control.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
So did you all have any additional help? Because I know for my family, we had a lady that helped us because my husband traveled a lot and my kids played sports and I was only one driver and they were in two separate locations. I mean, did you get any help with all of that, or did you all just juggle?
No. Oh gosh, no. Yeah. No, when I was a single mom with two kids, I had a lady that would come and help me. She'd pick the kids up at 3 and then take them home. And when I got home from work, I would take over and cook dinner. So she was there for about 4 or 5 hours a day. And then after we merged families, I started to hire people to help. And then at one point, my mother lived with us. She was very sick for 5 years. So I had 2 live-in nannies to look after her because she was an invalid. And when she passed away, that's when I had the 2 more kids came to live with me. So I had kept them on, and I still employ them. Yeah. So, even though I don't have kids at home, I keep them on full time.
Yeah, no, that's very nice. And they do become part of your family too. So that's always a nice thing. So your me time that you carved out for yourself, what would you do during that me time? Like, what's some great suggestions for moms who now it's, they used to call it my Calgon moment, or was that Calgon that called?
People are meditating now.
Now they're meditating. That was Calgon
now.
Was like what, the 60s? I don't even know when that was, but
I beg your pardon.
Oh, sorry. No, I guess they still have that. What did you do, or what do you suggest?
I did my nails every week, and I know you don't need to, but I would go every single week and get a manicure, pedicure on the weekend. And I would go to the hairdresser probably 3-4 times a week. So I'd wash my hair in the morning and then drive the kids to school and then show up at the hairdresser with wet hair and get a blow dry with my computer in front of me. And I just had me time that I was looking after myself. And I guess that's what was important and is important to me, is that I look after myself. So it's not to an extreme, but I do want my hair done and I do want my nails done. So
now, are all your kids grown now? And
the youngest one is just turned 19.
Okay.
And he moved out, to your answer to the scripted, he moved out just over a year ago, and he was down in the States for school, and we dropped him off on August 17th, and my husband and I moved to Las Vegas on August 18th. And he goes, "You're what?" I said, "We're done."
Yeah.
And then we moved to London. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because you're always trying to decide, what do I do when the house is now empty? It's a lot of juggling and planning when you have your children, but then what do you do when the last one leaves? I have a friend who said her son kept threatening her, and she said, don't make me happy. Don't make my day. So I know I certainly don't feel that way, but yeah, it's an adjustment too. Jennifer, welcome back to the Moms Club. Do you have a question? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and do you have a question for Anne?
I do. I'm amazed by your ability to be such a caretaker, not only to, your children, your husband, but mostly yourself and your business, and to keep your goals sort of on the table as well as everyone else's. Because to me, that's always the struggle that women have, is how do we kind of keep sort of our goals and our identity intact while also, because, I have 2 children, and I feel like I have to be a completely different mother to the 2 children. Like, every kid is different and they require something different from you. And so when you have, you talk about the grief you are going through when your sister dies, and then sort of an unplanned departure out of a marriage, you're like the queen of the graceful pivot from what I can see. And I'm just wondering, how have you managed to do that? Like, what is your mindset when you're forced to pivot? Because, we've all had curveballs with kids or our relationship with our husband, or even just financial pivots where you're like, okay, the story has to change. My priorities are different now, and I have to like write a new story.
It's a sad thing, but at some point I realized when I was working that the people I worked with were all, you're like a team when you have a job. And no one, I mean, people were kind, but no one really cared about my sad story. And even though people were very kind to me, and they do care, but we have a job to get done when I was at work. And that sad story and that heavy heart is something that's hard to take into an office and in an office environment. And I actually did feel for many years very, very alone. Someone would say, "Oh, you're doing so well." And in my heart, I was like broken. I was broken. And then, you've got all these kids, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got all these kids. It wasn't something where I was thinking, this is wonderful. It's like, it's your home, and it's like Disneyland there. It wasn't. And it wasn't awful, but it was a lot of juggling and a lot of being aware of everyone's needs and everyone's feelings. So you couldn't just put your feet up when you went home. You were dealing with their problems of the day. And then you go to work and you're feeling heavy and heavy. So I would say for dealing with kids and dealing with a heavy heart, and it's being in the moment and being concentrated on who's in front of you. And it's not so bad that people don't see your heart or your sadness. I think it's just recognizing that you're hurting, and then taking a bit of time. There was one point about a year and a half ago, that recent, that my heart was so heavy, and we were in the part of COVID, and I don't know what it's like when you live where you live, but we weren't allowed out of the house, but we could go for a walk. So I had walking buddies, and I told one friend that I was really desperately sad. And so my sister wasn't the only one I lost. I was going through a lot of loss at the time, a year and a half ago. And so she set me up to go to church on Christmas Day, but the church was closed. So I got to go in to see the minister. And I found that being in a place that it doesn't have to be a church, it can be anywhere, that took me away from it, that I could actually deal with my emotions and feelings. The one problem was that when I saw the minister, he was absolutely looked like Keanu Reeves. He was like the hottest guy. And I don't look at anyone else. But I went
and
back
where
to
is
her
this church?
And you joined the church,
what
correct?
church is this? Yeah.
I was going to say, what church is this?
Yeah, we're writing this one.
But it was awkward because I had gone there to have this solace and deal with my grief, and I end up, in alone in a chapel with wine and candles with this Keanu Reeves. Anyway, I would say that, though, not concluding Keanu Reeves, that was getting to deal with it and admit to myself that I was grieving, and to go to a place alone that was a sanctuary place. It could be anywhere. It could be a walk or somewhere, and deal with the grief. And I really cried in that church.
Yeah.
That I had to grieve. And so you can't sweep it under the carpet. And unfortunately, kids can't handle seeing their mom grieve to that extreme. So it's finding a place where you can grieve and deal with it, and admit to yourself that you're going through a lot. I think that to me was a learning experience, because I've always had to get through it, and I've never looked somewhere else to get through it. And when I was talking to the priest, as I talked and got it out, I said, my goodness, I'm losing this person. And they ultimately passed away 4 days later. But I said, I'm losing this person. And I said, I realize the whole world is grieving. So it's really hard to grieve when you realize you're not alone. And then you don't feel like you're allowed to grieve, because especially during COVID, when the whole world was grieving, but that's really what we're like all the time. We feel guilty when we're feeling upset about the blessings that we're given. And then there's one little hiccup, or a little hiccup, not losing someone. That's not little. But sometimes we feel guilty grieving when there's so much sadness in this world, but we should be allowed to.
Yeah.
So I would embrace that and get through it and not feel bad about feeling like something isn't going quite right.
Yeah. That's excellent.
Yeah, I love that advice, because the reality is we all live very unscripted lives, and thank God some of the things that I wanted didn't turn out the way they were supposed to turn out, because some of the curveballs are, they change your life in the best possible way.
Yeah, definitely.
They do.
I have one wild question about your business. And I mean, you've done so much, and I want to hear what your favorite part, what gets you going? Like, is it public speaking? Is it writing the books? Is it hosting a show? Is it walking the runway? I mean, tell us, what your favorite is. Like when you see it come across your desk and you're like, oh boy.
So one of the neat things recently, I actually love public speaking, and I love doing TV. But one of the neat things was I was hired by a large company to do, which should come out in the next day or two, so I can't say the name of it, but they asked me to do an ad, but more social media, so sort of like an influencer, but more like an ad. And they gave me the script, and the script was I had to go on a browser and look up how to download something. And I thought, why would you hire me to do that? Because nobody's going to watch somebody going on a browser and download.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, why don't I get in a bathtub and then be downloading on my computer and just show that you can multitask and how easy it is to download. Anyway.
Here come the bubbles. Yeah.
They rejected it.
Oh.
No, but I actually filmed the whole thing.
I like that idea. Well, I have one final question before we go, and that is, we're the moms that love to laugh or we're going to cry. And you wrote a book with that title. So with 8 kids, you've got to have some really funny mom stories. What's your funniest story as a mom?
Oh, my funniest. It's having fun, but I think I'll tell you one that comes to mind, but I don't know if it's my funniest. But my 16-year-old, he was 16, he's 19 now. He came in the kitchen about 3 years ago. He's very tall and very deep voice. And he says, I got a birthday present for you. And I'm like, it's not my birthday. He goes, I got you one. And I said, okay, do you want to give it to me? He goes, yeah. And he turns around, he pulls down his pants. And I thought he was going to moon me, but he has a tattoo on his calf that says, I love mom.
Oh, my goodness. I said,
you know what? You're underage. You got a tattoo.
But it says, I love mom.
You're so smart.
Yeah. If you're gonna get a tattoo,
that's a classic story.
When your mom doesn't want you to, that's the way you do it. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, Anne, this has been amazing. Time has just flown by. We really appreciate you being here. Can you share with our listeners where they could find you on social media?
Sure. It's Anne Kaplan, ANNKAPLAN _own it.
Love it.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, thanks for being with us today. And thank you to our Zoomer moms. You can find us at Inside the Moms Club on our Instagram and on our website. And we have some exciting news. We're going to be having some giveaways. So you're going to get on Instagram and check it out. So you might get some really great things, gifts for Christmas. So be sure and log on and check us out there. And we can't believe, it's hard to believe we're out of time.
It flies by.
It does fly by, but we'll be back next time with celebrities and extraordinary moms just like you. We know your me time is precious and valuable. Thank you so much for spending it with us. We'll see you next time on Inside the Moms Club.
Toodles.